somebody, when you look at the financials of the city, you'd have to ask yourself, I don't know how that actually financially impacts our financial status. Really come out of your wall.
They saw it.
It was so flat. Of course.
See, that's why people don't
Everyone
trust
wants
it.
to make sure their mics are on green.
We're going to go ahead and get started. So we're going to open this meeting, call this meeting to order. Welcome to our workshop for today. We're going to start off with our code compliance. Who's presenting?
I'll lead us off.
Mr. Cameron will lead us off.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we have been talking about code compliance. It goes all the way back to, last year, or it was well before the summer season, but I know that there was discussion with council members about code compliance, that the city had gotten, there was not really a concerted focus on it, quite like it was in the past. And quite frankly, we'd actually gone for a while. We didn't even have a code compliance officer on staff. It was all handled through Karen's office, which she was glad to add some additional resources to that side. But the one thing about it is I want to draw a little bit of history as to when I first got to Republic, the mindset of code compliance was very us against the community. It was very enforceful. It was to the point of the message that it was sending was we're walking out with a badge, asking for us to carry a weapon to the side, which I was not agreeing to. From the standpoint of that could be my mother's house they're going to, and so I want to make sure that we're demonstrating a position to help and to work with the community. Now, that being said, code compliance comes with a lot of different connotations or feelings that people have with going onto private property and dealing with it. So there are some certain laws that are governing code compliance. But today, the purpose of today's meeting, what I want to get is because code compliance is something that's important to different members in different ways, is to have an open discussion of what does compliance mean? What does that look like? How does this council want us to pursue it on a more aggressive or less aggressive way? But that's really what the council as a governing body to provide us direction is, because my position is still going to be the same as what it was. I do not want to go on someone's property and then tell someone, it's like you go to one extreme to the other. You've got a badge and a gun on your side because you feel like it's that dangerous. That's never been the image that we've wanted to present. However, if that's the desire of this council, when it comes to code compliance, that's what we want to get through today. And I know Councilmember Neal has got history of it from a background of how Republic handled it. So having that insight and input is understanding where we land on what does code compliance look like, what's the definition look like for us, and what's kind of the direction the council wants to take with the program. For one, investing more money and adding more staff to deal with it. How assertive and aggressive do we want to be? But also, that's the best part of having legal counsel is what does Missouri law actually limit us of what we can and can't do on private property? Because what's interesting about coming back home from Arkansas to Missouri was it's interesting how much time has to pass before you can actually enforce the law. So most people believe that if you have a tall grass ordinance, you can just go out there and tell them to mow it. It doesn't quite work that way. By the time you go out there and talk to them, they have a certain amount of time, and if they make any movements towards that, then they've complied with the law until we've got another problem. So it looks like nothing's really taking place when actually stuff is in accordance with the law. So there is some state statutes that prohibit us from certain areas. But that's kind of what our desire from this council is today is what does code compliance that you all agree so that I can provide direction to the staff as to what that looks like from an enforcement perspective, which is why the judge is here as well today, because some of these issues are all tied to the court system. And so making sure there's just good, robust conversation. So this is a day that I'm really asking for you to engage in your own conversation for what you want the law to look like and how you want it to be enforced. So, because we don't have a recommendation, I've already told you what my recommendation, what it has been how do we soften the way the city was before, but also how do we get back some of the teeth that we've kind of let go, admittedly, to the wayside. So with that, I'll turn it over to our staff, Karen Haynes, our Community Development Director.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. The Builds Department is pleased to have the opportunity to speak with you this morning about the city's code compliance program. The Builds Department, over the course of the last several months, has been working on the development of a structured and systematic approach to code compliance and the development of a nuisance abatement program, crucial to maintaining the community's safety, health, and quality of life while respecting rights, the law, and also providing citizens with guidance, education, and resources to abate nuisances. Today we'll provide a brief overview of the city's municipal code chapters 425 and 430 related to code compliance. We'll provide real-life examples of nuisances, the most common that we see, and provide a brief overview of the three mechanisms for resolution of a nuisance: the issuance of a municipal citation, the administrative hearing process to obtain an order of abatement, and the issuance of an administrative warrant for municipal court for the more egregious violations. Late last summer, after nearly 5 years without a dedicated code compliance official, we were able to hire for the position Kendall Jones, who will be presenting today as our new code compliance official. Kendall splits her time on code compliance, minor permit reviews, and assists Laura with training as a deputy city clerk. Please keep in mind, we will not be discussing specific cases this morning, currently working through the quasi-judicial process, including those scheduled for the first administrative hearing in May. We look forward to your feedback, and we will have some time for questions and comments after the presentation. And Kendall Jones will be presenting this morning.
Okay, I guess it's not going to be more. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
As Karen mentioned, my name is Kendall Jones. I am the code compliance official. I started back in August. Prior to that, I still worked in the builds department and then actually over at the court as well. So starting us off here, I do refer to Chapter 425 for community standards. Let me see if my mouse is going to. Sorry, having the clicker work here. There we go. Okay, starting off with 425.10, this establishes the authority of the community standards, and that authority is regarding protecting the health, safety, and well-being of our residents, briefly as Karen mentioned as well. Following that, we have 425.020 for the purpose of the community standards. And that purpose is to ensure the homes are well maintained in the community for the benefit of our residents' health and safety. It also promotes an attractive community and enhances the economic value of our city as a whole. Enforcement is included as well. That's currently handled by myself. When there's not a designated staff member, that can be delegated to multiple staff members, or in other instances, such as mine, part-time. Depending upon the type and condition of the case, our police department may be asked to assist in the process of the code compliance cases. That can be as small as assisting with contacting residents, or in other cases, the issuance of a citation. If the matters persist and cannot be resolved in that matter, then it could progress to an administrative warrant or administrative hearing. So a question I get asked is, what is a nuisance? I've posted here on the slide the exact verbiage from the code itself, but in summary, it's an act or condition that injures or endangers the health, safety, or welfare of our residents. It also applies to our infrastructure such as sidewalks, drainage, and ditches, things of that nature. Here I have some of our common violation types, the most common being probably grass and weeds, followed by trash and junk. Included is also yard waste, junk or inoperable vehicles, and rank vegetation. Zoning is another one. It's just not quite as frequent as the others. One I have seen more recently would be deteriorated fences. That's somewhat recent, but that is a nuisance as well. Here I have an example of tall grass in the code. It specifically states noxious weeds or overgrown vegetation in excess of 7 inches. With that, when I visit the property, I'm not out there quite literally measuring the grass. It's more so within reason. A great example would be this past weekend after the rain event. It's possible that I'll be getting more calls given how much rain we received. When we receive those complaints, we try to be understanding of the residents, especially with how wet the grass is, and having that time to get it mowed. And we'll have another rain event this weekend, so I'm sure I'll be getting some more calls. But we do try to have understanding with that. As I mentioned, this is our most common nuisance violation. In 2023, we had 86 cases, and then in 24, we had 120. I did want to mention that on properties that have 2 or more acres, to be in compliance, they just have to maintain a 14-foot strip of the property lines. That's a question I often get asked with vacant lots. Next up is second comment, and that would be trash and junk violations. In our code, it's an accumulation of rubbish, trash, etc. This is a little broad, so the cases on these that I see can range from a small pile of miscellaneous items near the driveway to multiple sizable piles of trash and junk throughout the entirety of the property. In 23, we had 48 cases. In 24, we had 45. I did want to include a slide on inoperable vehicles. This is one that I have a lot of discussion with residents on, specifically because of the definition of inoperable or junk vehicles in the code. I wanted to clarify for you guys that an inoperable or junk vehicle has to have 2 conditions, the first of which being that it doesn't properly display license plates or current registration, but it also has to have one of the other characteristics. Bringing in the fact that it has to be viewable from the right-of-way, it needs to have a very clear indication that it's inoperable. I have those listed out there, but some common ones we see are if there's a flat tire or if it's on jacks and obviously cannot be driven, if it's missing a hood, windshield. Another example would be if it has a lot of trash stored within it, that could attract vermin. And these conditions apply to vehicles specifically on private property, not on the street or right-of-way. One thing I also wanted to mention, my apologies, is that I get the comment a lot from residents regarding parking in the yard on private property. We don't currently have anything specifically in the code stating that those cannot be parked or where they can be parked on the property or how many vehicles residents can have on their property. Here we have socioeconomic cases. These are cases in which they previously had or currently had a existing violation under community standards, and upon inspecting the case, it was discovered that there were health concerns. In specific instances, they were not connected to our city utilities, water, wastewater. So we are seeking your direction on these cases such as these specifically. Here I have a general overview of the code compliance process. Try to not ramble on about this too much. So it starts off, we receive the complaint. That can be received online, in person, or over the phone. Most common, I would say, is online through the concern form. That's a great tool that residents have. Following the receipt of the complaint, I do a verification inspection, so I drive by the property and see if I can observe the violation that was noted in the report. If there is a violation, a first notice is sent. In the event that it is a rental or with commercial properties, when there's a property owner and a tenant, a letter is sent to both the property owner and the current resident at the home or the occupant at the commercial business. After that 15 days has passed, a reinspection is completed. If compliance is not met, a second notice is sent. That notice gives them 10 days. After that, another inspection is completed. If the compliance is still not met, that is when a final notice is sent and a violation notice is posted on the property. 10 days after that, if it goes to the administrative hearing process, they will receive a notice of hearing, and a different notice will be posted to the property for that hearing date. With administrative hearing, if that is the route the case goes, it would be at least 10 days later that the administrative hearing would be held. We do currently have quarterly hearings scheduled, so depending upon when the case is closed would depend how long they have to wait for that hearing. I did want to make note that in the beginning of the process specifically, if there is a clear line of communication from the person receiving the letters or communications from our office, we do try to make an effort to be understanding of their situations and work with them if possible within reason. A great example is with tall grass. Sometimes it's just a matter of they have a broken part on their mower and they're waiting for it to come in so they can repair their mower so they can mow, things of that nature. Here I'll have examples of the notice of violations residents receive when they've received a complaint on their property. This is the first notice they'll receive. It specifically states the violation they are believed to be nuisance they're believed to be in violation of. It states our intent to work with them. It also gives them the deadline for abatement, which is that 15 days. After that, if compliance is not met, they receive this second notice. The second notice states the date that we previously attempted to contact them, notates that there's been a recent verification of non-compliance, and it states potential penalties as well, while reiterating the code that they're believed to be in violation of. Now, this notice, rather than giving them 15 days, gives them 10 days. As I mentioned previously, it will then go to a final notice and posting. So the final notice states the previous dates that we attempted to contact them, reiterates the section of code, but this also notates that it's a commencement of an administrative proceeding and that no answer is required to be filed. And should the nuisance not be abated, it states that the city could seek an order of abatement. So it specifically states that indication. With this, there's also a posting on the property, so a notice of violation, and that's noted in the letter as well. This is another 10-day deadline. This is an example of a notice of violation. I'm not sure if you're able to see it on there, but previously it did say 7 days. That has been up to 10 days, just given our experience with the post office. There's sometimes delays, so we want to ensure residents can receive those notices. The postings state the violation they're believed to be, the nuisance they're believed to be in violation of, provides that 10 days, and makes note of potential penalties. So it's kind of a summarized version of the letter they receive. Moving forward, kind of what Karen mentioned as well, it's an option of administrative warrants. Administrative warrants are written orders from a municipal judge that allows officials to inspect a property within the city. They can be issued if the judge finds that the property or items are both located within the city and that the owner has officially been asked and denied that access. Warrants would then be directed to and executed by the chief of police or any other police officer of the City of Republic. Police officers or attorneys of the City of Republic can apply for administrative warrants. A non-adversary hearing is then held by the municipal judge to determine if probable cause exists and if the action to be taken by the city is reasonable in light of the facts stated. If we were to go for the administrative hearing process, the resident would also receive, would receive, my apologies, a notice of hearing. So this notice of hearing states contains the information similar to the other notices, but rather than providing a date of abatement, it provides them with a date of their administrative hearing, the location, date, and time. With these, we also plan to post a notice in the newspaper, and there's a notice that would go on the property similar to the notice of violation. And the other option being citations. Citations would be issued by the police department. Currently, we've asked for assistance from RPD with cases that involve vehicles in the right-of-way. Those cases would be agreed upon between the two departments, being the Community Development Department and the Police Department. Should a citation be issued, the charge would then follow the judicial process rather than the administrative process on our end. Throughout the presentation, you've heard me mention administrative hearings and abatement quite frequently. So this slide kind of gives more detail about that process. I do want to make note of the administrative hearing dates at the bottom. Those are currently scheduled for May 15th, August 28th, and November 20th. Lisa Addington is our current hearing officer. The hearing officer's responsibility is to look at the information presented in the hearing and determine if there is a nuisance or code violation present at the property. Should the hearing officer find that a violation exists, that proper notice has been given, and that there has been a failure to abate, they may order the property owner to abate said nuisance by said date. Should the nuisance still not be abated, the city would then have the authorization to abate the nuisance with the order of abatement. The cost of abatement, in addition to the cost of the notices and inspections completed, can be reported to the hearing officer. The hearing officer can then certify that amount to the city clerk, who can send that to the director of finance, and those totals can be issued to the property owner via a special tax bill, or those costs can be added to the annual real estate taxes. With any of these, the hearing officer can determine the responsible party is responsible for the cost of abatement, and should they not be paid, a lien can be placed on the property for failure to pay. We did submit a request for qualifications to contractors for abatement procedures. Those services included lawn trimming, mowing, edging, and debris and trash removal. Unfortunately, we did not receive any submittals for our RFQ. So the next steps as a result will be identifying a list of contractors that, following administrative hearings, will be contacted depending upon if an order of abatement is issued for said properties, and then we would contact them with the properties. Do you guys have any questions for us at this time?
Any questions from council? Kendall, thank you. That was a great presentation. This is a lot of great information in here. I know being on council for so long, there's a lot of excellent questions that you just answered for me in the best possible way, so
Thank
I
you.
really appreciate that. So for today, Mr. Cameron, were we specifically, I know there were a few things in this presentation asking for specific action from city council. As far as discussion from us, what was the list of those specific items that we needed to address today?
I think it's just, it's a resource question of how effective, or how much do we want to actually enforce? How many administrative hearings have we done in 9 years, since I've been here? How many? None.
This May 15th will be our first round of administrative.
So we've not done any of these, and so the question would be, anytime you start to enforce, what I would anticipate, once we ramp this up, because we now have someone full-time, which we would all agree it needs to be elevated. I mean, I would even tell you that part. It's gonna eventually, they'll end up at this body, because once they start doing that, we wanna make sure that the support is with this body, that we're enforcing the code. You don't wanna get here and say, well, wait a minute, let me call somebody. I don't want my phone ringing saying, hey, we're out there. You've obviously met our staff. They're not looking like they're gonna go out there and just shut someone's water, do something crazy. But it's going to generate some calls that we've gotten, like if you start with officers writing tickets, we've got people out there, they think you have something better to do with your time. We just want to make sure there's support at this level, that when it gets here, or you get contacted, that it's supported, that this is an effort that's coming from the council. So what I would almost suspect is you'll see a resolution or us working on something that the council is adopting for us to pursue and to take more stronger action with the courts or different areas to address some of these areas. Because while staff did not outline all of them, some of these are newsworthy. Meaning, some of these are going to draw attention and media attention because you got some people without operating water in locations. You've got certain situations where there's been even debate amongst staff whether they should go in and even pursue that. And so without having a tone from this elected body, what is the value, I guess you could say, of getting that done? What would that look like? So I just want to make sure what we're looking for is, are you wanting us to issue more tickets, or do you want it, because the judge is sitting right there, like, how do you want him to enforce them when they even get to his, to that level?
I'll jump in and give my opinion.
Yeah.
I'm less concerned with citations.
Yeah.
I think anybody that we reach out to and they're compliant and working with whatever resource constrictions they have, as long as they're communicative with us. But I also know that there's issues that have been going on for literal years where the person's just not going to comply.
Yeah.
And I'm even less concerned with giving them a citation and just kind of, punitively punishing them as much as fixing the problem. Because what we're running into is people who are trying to sell property, and anybody who comes and looks at the property says, no, I'm not buying this because of that.
Yeah.
Specifically citing problems, and that's an issue. Again, I don't care about a punitive punishment to the person, I just want it to not affect their neighbors, is where my concern is. And so I'm one of the people who thinks we need to be more proactive with our enforcement or more aggressive with it. I mean, even looking at our current process, it's a 45-day process before the quarterly administrative hearing comes up. That means I could mow my yard once during the summertime and never get in trouble. I mean, I can skirt that day's count if I want.
So more specifically towards the nuisances that are, or like taller grass, the things that are definitely something that's,
I mean, any nuisance, same with broke-down vehicles. I mean, if we drive around, we can find
Broke,
vehicles
yeah.
that have literal trees growing in the bed of them because they've been there, broke down, not moved for so long.
so
I'm not saying we go to that extreme, but we can look at what Springfield just passed, and if you don't have valid license on your car, they could potentially tow it at this point. And so, we've got vehicles that aren't operable and haven't clearly been operable for years that just sit in the front yard of a property. Pull it in the backyard, just drag it into your backyard, and then suddenly it's not as much of an issue. But we have people that, like I said, that abate a nuisance for a little bit and they go right back to it, and so I think that needs to be part of it also. We definitely don't want to punish anybody who's just had, their vehicles broke down and they're trying to fix it. Like, that's not what this is a focus of for me. This is a person who's just persistent with it and doesn't do anything to fix the problem.
and still allowing that discretion. Like, I really appreciate that discretion on the tall grass because, yeah, I end up in that position so many times. So that discretion is something that's important to you as well.
Yeah,
And,
right.
but the not punishment, but the punitive damage is not necessarily something, you're more of an educational role in fixing the problem.
Right.
Thank you.
Fixing of the problem, that's, yeah, I'm with you. I saw the 45 days, I was like, wow. So again, I can mow tomorrow and never mow again, because that's the
Yes.
whole summer that I don't have. And again, with the vehicles, I've called in on several vehicles that are obviously not operable. They have a license plate on it, but they're not valid license plates. They're not up to date. So that's one of the questions I had, because it said the vehicle has to be licensed, but does it have to be a valid and up-to-date license?
Correct.
Okay, so there's tons of those in the city. And I saw one collecting brush the other day. They just put the brush on top of their car. But that car's been there, I know, for 5 years and not been moved. So these items, they need to be addressed.
And definitely, you said you mentioned the 45 days as well, so
That's-
process is a
Yeah.
lengthy.
I can see where the 45 days really, for the junk vehicles, the trash and the junk in the yard, and zoning issues, yes, but for grass and weeds and yard waste, that 45 days is way out of line. But, I mean, that's by law, isn't it, correct? The 45 days?
The notice provisions
Yeah.
set forth.
Some of those we would have control over, Councilmember Harder, but we would be able to change some of those. There's a couple 10-day timelines that are in our code, so this body would be able to change those if you guys voted to approve that. Some of them, however, are mandated by state law.
Okay.
It just depends upon which particular portion of the timeline.
And-
But we could look at that if that's what the council wanted us to do.
I would mention also, it's been our experience actually mailing letters, that a 10-day timeframe is sometimes insufficient. Many times when we're sending out planning and zoning notices, we were doing that 7 to 10 days before and realizing that the person was not actually getting the letter until after that 10-day period, after the actual hearing. That is part of the reason that we changed that to 15-day, to ensure that we had plenty of time for that letter to be received by the property owner.
And just to add to that, one of the really important elements of that is notice, because if it's something that doesn't go to the judge, if it's handled at the lower level within the administrative process, and it's, whether it's Lisa or an administrative hearing officer that comes after her, that's one of the two most important elements, is does this person have notice? Does this person have the capability to be here and be heard? So you have to kind of marry those two concepts together and come up with something reasonable.
And it's,
Ah.
and it's easier probably and more effective to mail than to hand deliver and put in somebody's hand, here's your notice.
Correct. It would be virtually impossible for our staff to actually do that and catch people at home. We would also have a great deal of concern to actually go onto the property, and we would look for legal advice as to whether we had the authority to do that, to actually serve a letter to somebody notifying them of a violation.
Which brings up a question I had when this all, before it even started, was should the code compliance officer be under the umbrella of the police department?
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Cameron?
So my concern with that would be is utilizing law enforcement officers to deal with issues such as that, because it's not technically a crime, and utilizing, I mean, no disrespect, but law enforcement have a struggle in this country right now as it is, not being viewed as overbearing. And so keeping that image separate, but I guess at the same time is I would not want officers going to doors unless it was a safety issue for the officer. But it would, I mean, being under the enforcement side, there's been debate of that for a while. As long as it was just a clear delineation that it didn't cross over, hey, we're short on code enforcement, let's send an officer to do that. That'd be my only concern with that provision. Being housed underneath it doesn't bother me at all. Chief's probably gonna step back and go, we don't want it at all. Would be my suspicion, so, but yeah, I don't think there's any, I'm not familiar with it being under, city law enforcement anywhere else. It's not, I don't know if it's common practice, but it may just be because the law enforcement side want to keep a clear delineation between the two. But it could definitely be researched and considered, because we like to do things a little bit different and think outside the box. So I think that would be something worth noting. Just, I think it's a resource issue to me, is like, back to the site, if we're gonna ramp it up and we're gonna issue things, I like the idea in certain situations, delivering it. We're gonna try to find someone to serve it versus waiting to go by mail. That could be a challenge too. So I think it's more about having resources that can actually get out on the ground and get face-to-face with folks. I think that's the most effective way to do it versus letter writing.
Not arguing one way or the other, but it could be a non-commissioned officer type position. It doesn't have to be a commissioned
Being in
police
plain
officer.
clothes officer, like not even in clothes. not
Someone who
even-
doesn't carry a gun.
Yeah,
I mean, if you look at the heat team in Springfield, they are not commissioned officers. The traffic enforcement team who's doing accident stuff are not commissioned officers. They don't have guns.
see, I love, and this is the perspective those are perspectives we need for what do we want to build, so when it comes to budgeting for that and creating that and what resources need to be applied, that's great feedback, because I don't even know what you just, I'm not, what the heat team, the heat shield, I don't know what, but.
Handicap Enforcement action team.
Yeah, but see, I think that's very interesting. I think something else, I'm going back to one that we had, I think it was last year, where the neighbor was writing, to your point, about the city, you're not doing anything from it, like we're doing something, we wrote the letter we're supposed to follow. And it's like, they know how to skirt it. And that's a real gap in like, what do you do in a situation when they're like, I know how to get around this and I'm not gonna do anything. So I do think there's questions of, that I'll have for legal counsel, is there ways to pursue legislative action at a state level that we, the city, want to pursue to help create a little more teeth to that maybe is missing in state statute? Where would we craft legislation? Because we've had a lot of success in the legislature that I think it would be at least start moving towards stuff that would actually address those gaps. But there are gaps where someone's a widow, and it's legitimately like where you want to see, which is we were working with David Burton's group, like, could you not help out, like maybe this neighborhood project, and what I'm familiar with in historical settings is the Ministerial Alliance, and I'm not calling them out, but just using, they had men's groups or different groups that would go out and help in those situations. It's just not gained a lot of traction here as to where, like, to see that there's no RFPs to help us is kind of indicative of like, well then, who helps the widow? Who helps those folks that are needing that assistance, and where do you call? And I think that's probably why we've taken the approach we have. There's so many of those cases where you're like, this is not a matter of trying to be subversive to the law, but you've got a neighbor that's right next door that you're like, that could be my house and I want it to be taken care of because I'm trying to sell it. And so it's such why we're having a work session. It's a dilemma that how do we go about this? But using common sense, I love the fact that we're talking about that. Like, we don't want to be punitive, but we have to be punitive at certain times. And so like I tell legal counsel, I don't want to set up a speed limit sign or write tickets the next day after we set up a speed limit sign and change it. I think what ought to happen is that we send out a letter campaign that we're going to start enforcing these areas where inoperable vehicles. We're sending a message that we're going to begin to come out there. We haven't been doing it as much, but now we're going to address those areas in accordance with the law. And I think that will, many will celebrate that, but I also believe you're going to hear some noise back on that as well.
So, David, I've got a question, not to get in the middle of that, but just on an understanding issue. So if there's something that directly affects the health of a neighbor, let's say that there's not a sewer connection, there's not a water connection, there's something on that property that creates a immediate health hazard, is this all still within the same administration as everything else? Or if it's like an immediate problem that we can tell even by visiting the problem, today it's causing a problem, do you still have to wait that additional 45-day or the
I'll let you take that.
accumulation?
So the short answer is yes. So, but it depends upon what you're seeking. So it depends upon the recourse that you would be seeking. So within the context of your question, which I assume you mean, what is the city's ability to go in and stop or correct whatever the issue is? The answer is yes. Like the judge said, I like to due process. I mean, we have to, we can revisit the timelines and some of the code provisions over which we do have control. But at the end of the day, the city's not going to be able to go in and remove a person from their home when he's living there with no water. Without an administrative search warrant that's signed off on by a judge, we go in and we lay eyes on it and we actually see it without going through this process, even if we don't have an ASW. So we, kind of fall short of that, but we give him the notice of the violation, he has a hearing, all of those things. So we still have to go through the process. Unfortunately, as it might sound in that situation, no matter how egregious it is.
Sure.
But I think what David is saying here and kind of what the priority is figuring out how much resources go into that and then how aggressive that enforcement we want to tackle, essentially. I mean, there's certain code changes, which would be my area, and then all of the rest of the discussion surrounding it, but.
Sure. Thank you.
I don't know if this is the case, but is there anything in the code that, if we get out of code compliance into more public works, public safety, that would supersede code compliance requirements? Is there anything?
There's,
I'm just asking the question.
yeah, there's some provisions in the planning and zoning provisions, and Karen, you can chime in here if you want, that do provide the city a little bit more authority and power to come in and say, hey, stop work, cease work order. But at least as far as I know, and correct me if I'm wrong on that, most, if not all of those provisions apply to work sites, contractors, people that are working. I don't think that we have anything that applies to residences that would just be purely residential purposes, unless there's something in the
There are
zoning.
provisions, the building official can declare a building dangerous if certain conditions were present. One of those might be an example of occupancy of a residential structure without utility connection. That would be considered a dangerous building. The catch with that is once the building official declares a building as dangerous, no occupancy can occur in that building. And in some instances, that may require the removal of a person from a structure permanently or semi-permanently until the situation is corrected. Those would be very particular situations where we have to be very careful with due diligence, and also instead of the administrative hearing process, that would need to go through the warrant process to get an order from the judge for us to verify the condition, post the structure, remove the person, and then get an order to actually correct the violation.
So Karen, question, I want to put you on the spot, and I hate to do it, but I'm going to do it. Okay, so I'm telling you, yes or no answer. Do we have any of those situations existing in Republic right now?
Yes.
Okay. So for council, this is why we're having work session. They've been sitting on these for a while going, what do we do? Because that is involved and there's going to be, it's going to draw attention. We're trying to get the pulse of what's the council's position on us, because that's not a common sense, that's an issue of, we've got because once the building official they're hesitant to make that designation of what's going to happen when it gets to this level, most likely. And because it's going to draw attention and just making sure there's support to go through. I think that's what we have to really get out on the table, because those issues exist. And what is the vibe or I've got a good vibe of how we take care of those ones, like, hey, we're working around it, we don't want to be punitive. But there's some, it's like they need action because they're dangerous situations. And so I think those are the conversations we'd like to have too.
Thank you, Mr. Cameron.
Speaking
Mr.
of,
Dyke.
on your situation, could we not fast track an emergency hearing, one of those if it's that much of an issue for the city, can we not fast track a emergency hearing?
Like in the situation Karen described, where it's an occupancy, a dangerous building
Yeah.
situation? We could, I don't know, we would need to make some changes to the code for me to feel comfortable with doing that. Just because of the way it's written, it would be silent on that procedure. And I think the best recommendation in that instance would be for us to revisit it now and be proactive about it and have those provisions set in our code, established by the body, that set forth, this is what the emergency procedure is, these are the bases under which you can utilize this procedure. That level of detail, I would recommend that that's something we would do in order to address a situation like the way you're describing.
I mean,
Which of course that's a great avenue.
yeah, I mean, that'd be like a worst case scenario, or the end case where, if the person's just being dumb about this whole situation, where we say, hey, we're gonna fast track an emergency hearing, these are your options.
Sure,
You
yeah.
can either comply now, or we'll have emergency hearing and you will be removed.
Yeah, to answer the question, yes, that can be done. Like I said, our code, just having reviewed this even before today and being familiar with it throughout discussions, we don't have specific provisions in the sections that touch upon these hearings right now that would speak to that. And so that's why I would recommend that we could add them. We would certainly add them to do that. There wouldn't be anything wrong with that or out of the ordinary.
One of those just in case scenarios, Adam?
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Cameron.
So what I would recommend we do with that is that we draft language, we bring it here into a work session, let the council discuss, what do you want that to look like? Because we won't we won't be able to write it in here today. But just to kind of get a pulse of, through the legislation, because I like the idea what Megan is saying, is what is the procedure, what does that look like? Because I know staff would prefer not the gray, the more of a black and white process to what that looks like. But how you arrive at how we do that, and the timeline that's given to do that, what was the term, emergency hearing or expedite it? Fast track it.
Yeah,
Fast track.
I think there would have to be definitions when fast tracked is warranted versus when it's not. Not everything it's a tool that could be used, and it's understood it's only used in certain times.
Right.
So I think that we can come up with, I know we can come up with the legislation that would look like to make sure that it's fair and consistent, but not just overbearing. But there are certain situations, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
No, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No,
Sorry, I thought,
I was
yeah.
seeing the judge's hand.
No worries.
I think, and just Megan, for some thoughts on that, I think what you'd wanna do is define a public nuisance versus a private nuisance. That's gonna help delineate these emergency situations from the ones that code compliance wants to, and then the administrative search warrants are only applicable to those public nuisances. Those public nuisances being those ones that could verge on the public health or damage to public city property of sorts. Anyway, in my mind, you'd start there and that help kind of be able to fast track the public nuisances necessarily. I don't know if that
Yeah, that makes sense.
goes in line with where you guys want to head or not.
Yeah, I think.
But allows you the discretion that we were talking about earlier for the private nuisances, the yard, the trash, the cars of sorts,
Yeah.
Alleviate that under normal circumstances, but then cure the real dangerous conditions under a more expedited fashion.
Yeah. I like that idea. I like that idea.
Thank you. Do we have any additional questions from council on priorities for code compliance?
I just got curious, would you be more aggressive against, people who habitually kind of, whatever, they don't, compared to someone who's just one-off? I mean, you figured if you go after more habitual offenders, you'd be more aggressive and more,
So, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Cameron?
So consistency matters, setting precedent, those words that do apply, making sure we're consistent for how we apply the law to it. So I think that there are certain areas that people like have gotten accustomed to how you would navigate around it because state statute, they're good at it. I think there are places where, I think there's some work that's necessary on the legislative side too, that's not inside this room. But I think that I'd like to hear from both the judge and legal counsel is we're limited in these spots. There's nothing we can do in general, just simply the way the code's written. I think that we as a city then ought to say, well, let's take a more progressive approach, go look for some partners in that through the municipal league and say, hey, could we do something with this law to make it a little bit tighter, to give us a little more action, that it's not taking 45 days? Because somebody wants to be bad to their neighbor, they can say, I'll tell you what I'll do, I'll just go out there, I'll measure it, mow it right about here, drink some lemonade for 4 or 5 weeks and then go out there and do it again. And so we see that, it's antagonizing, but I think what the vibe what I've gotten, what our staff needs, at least I hope we have, is that we want to use common sense, but there are certain areas we also want to use what the law allows us to do in a reasonable fashion, but at the same time, there are some areas that we need to take care of that are public safety issues or building official issues that we need to take on that are going to draw some attention. The other thing about it is that I think that we have got to consider, and I know my staff will look at me and just shake their head, but when we did the citywide cleanup, we got to get serious about the cleanliness of the community and provide opportunity. The problem is you got people hauling in stuff that don't even live in the city. So I think that we need to at least kick the tires of that a little bit to say, hey, we're not only going out to, we want to be a cleaner city, we want to participate in it. How are we going to do that? I think we need to come up with some sort of creative way to do that it can be enforceable, that does not put we went from the first year was like 19, or what was it, Dan, when I first got here, we instituted it.
That was great.
It was like $20,000, then it went up to $80,000 because we started taking in all of it. I promise you, this city had more junk 3 years later than it had when we started. And
It was party weekend, though.
I mean, I watched trailers getting hauled in down my street that were coming in from outside the city full of junk. So anyway, I think that needs to be, the tires of that need to get kicked again a little bit more. But I think that what we want to communicate is we are going to go effectively a little bit more after this. And there are certain areas that I know staff has been really hesitant to address because it does potentially result in someone being removed from their home.
Thank you, Mr. Cameron. One last thing that I'd like to touch on before we do conclude as well, something with code compliance that just occurred to me, is also with our hours on our brush and yard drop-off area too, and kind of exploring that as a council too. I know in code compliance, that's a big issue with a lot of different people, even with the grass thing where something happens where you can't necessarily make it on that one weekend per month. But giving that, that's something that a lot of people have talked to me as well on keeping their yard up. I know it's difficult. I'm in that same boat myself. I have to let it pile up in my yard a lot of times before I can get down. So code compliance issue. Is there anything else anyone else would like to add to this before we move on to the next topic?
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Campbell.
Might be late to the game, but this might be a question for the staff. I know we've just recently started this program back up. Other than those few cases that might need to be a little bit more aggressive, what's the sense that you're getting? How is your response from the nuisance that you are sending letters out to?
Yeah, I'll address that kind of as a macro level. We're finding that once we contact people in regards to a nuisance, very responsive. Most people don't want to break the law at their residence. And many times with tall grass, even junk perhaps, overgrowth, it's simply a matter of their own internal resources, whether it's time or money, and their ability to take care of those items. Most of the time, we're able to address those effectively just by communicating letters and follow-up calls and then follow-up to get those items corrected. We have very few, very egregious cases that will go through either the abatement procedure or the administrative search warrant procedure where essentially we're looking at removal of someone from their home and/or designation of a dangerous building. Kendall, do you have anything to add? I think the communication really is what has elevated this program currently. We're finding most of our cases are closed out in a matter of a month or so.
Okay, thank you. And this might be for Mr. Cameron. I know that we might need some stricter rules for certain criteria here, but you had mentioned maybe making the public more aware of these since they haven't really been in front of them in plain view for several years. Just getting the letter out or something, however we communicate, to let them know that this is kind of our goal, and some of these might just fix themselves without having to go to this extreme.
We are potentially looking at designation of a period of time if council would allow for cleanup, kind of a designated cleanup period for the city, and also a time for us to educate the citizens on what is a nuisance, and then our overall approach to addressing nuisances and our code compliance.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Cameron.
So the thought behind that is, I'm a big fan of always making sure you're communicating well in advance of what you're trying to achieve. I think it ought to be tied around a marketing piece that's tied around a cleaner republic. The whole objective is protecting property rights, a cleaner republic, things of that nature. I think the objective would be in threefold would be, one, we're asking for people's support and participation, but also at the same time encouraging neighbor to help neighbor. There's certain situations you just don't know. Check on your neighbor and ask them what's going on, and maybe they can help. And encourage people to, I know people in the day we live in liability is like, well, if I get hurt on their property and I'm mowing, I don't want to be, so just encourage people to be neighborly in that capacity, but also encourage people to let us know if you're dealing with a situation that is not being resolved in a way that you would prefer. I also think this council needs to pass a resolution endorsing a certain week of the month that is, and we're encouraging citizens to let us know where they're having situations so that we can go out even more so. Or in the past, they said, we've called and the city's done nothing about it. Because that's what we get a lot of stuff is, you're not doing anything about it. I've called you, hey, the council, I think the council passing something suggesting that we're taking a more concerted focus, a common sense approach, but also there will be in certain situations an enforceable approach. I don't think we can just go lightly at it and say, hey, we're not going to take care of these things. So I do think there's a marketing campaign communication piece that we ought to do, like the same publications we did with water and sewer, that it's not just some letter. I think it ought to be something that's specific on all categories of what we're looking to do, and include a little bit more language what the law requires. So I don't think it's just a simple letter to citizens. It'll be more of a publication that's talking about a focus on a cleaner republic.
Thank you, Mr. Cameron.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Campbell. I was like a
We're
mix of
both DC, so you might as
Yeah, that
well.
was like a mix of both your last name. I don't know how I did that.
So, I know out where I live, I know all my neighbors, even though we don't live real close to each other. I know all the neighbors, we help each other out. I will be the first to say, if I can say this, that if the staff ever finds a situation where a widowed lady or something like that, we have the resources, I have the resources to be able to help in situations like that. And back to your point with David Barton, those type of programs, or maybe we can get with him, but I'll be the first to say that I would be willing to help in certain situations. Of course, we can't do them all, but we do want to be neighborly. So,
We all have resources we can pull from at that point as well.
right.
Thank you,
Widowed
Mr.
men too, don't forget the widowed men.
Thank you, Mr. Great point. So, no, excellent. I really appreciate all the emphasis on safety too, because I know a lot of these issues, especially when it comes to Of course, every one of our neighborhoods is different, and so just please be mindful of, approaching these situations. I really appreciate the staff being very mindful of that safety factor, because some of these, a lot of us are very passionate individuals, and so, is there anything else, council, before we close this topic?
No, but Mr. Mayor, what I want to point out to this council, this is how it should work. I love the fact that the council is engaging in what they would like to see done, and we can come into this room and come up with consensus versus letting it just sit out there and nothing really happen, because that's what we've done. But I'm thankful that we have these lunch work sessions. I would tell you what the priority of these are, not just to hear the sound of our own voice. We need to hear what that is, have this dialogue, so staff can walk away. They get to see your body language, they get to hear what's going on and where you're coming from, and that they got help, because there's just two of them sitting there, and Karen was doing it all by herself. So Karen, thank you for keeping it afloat. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor. I met my quota.
Absolutely.
See you
Thank you.
today.
Thank you, Mr. Cameron. No, that was a wonderful discussion. So thank you to everyone. That was a lot of great information that we've had today, a lot of great discussion from council. So I thank you as well. Can you stay till the end? Okay. So. Okay. So we need about a 2-minute break in order to get our PowerPoint presentation up for our next item. So just.
Is that Terry's?
We're loading. We've got the update from the Historical Society and Miss Terry Mooneyham up next, but we just need about 2 minutes to get things up to speed on the interwebs.
Widowed man, come on.
I think I need 3 minutes. You'll be all right. I think you'll be all right.
Mike's back on green. We're still rolling, so we're ready.
Okay, are you ready for me?
We are
Mayor?
ready. Welcome.
Okay. My name is Terry Mooneyham. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the current president of the Republic Historical Society. And I was happy to accept the invitation from the council to appear here today to give an update on where we've been and what we've accomplished since a year. I can't believe it's been a year since we received the generous donation for the land. We've been busy gaining support, creating community awareness of our project to build this building that started out as a remodel of an old building to maybe it's going to cost $1 million to build what we wanted to $3.8 million to do what we'd really like to have. So a little timeline, like I said, membership support, creating community awareness. We've been applied for a grant for the tax credit grant through the Missouri Department of Economics. Our project has been approved, but we did not, the pool of money was gone by the time our application hit the pool of money. So we have a contact at the Missouri Department of Economics who gave me some really strong guidelines on how to enhance our application. So we have done that, submitted it, and now we're just waiting. We should hear something back, I think, in May on that. We have a waiting list for donors waiting for this tax credit program. The state said we qualify for a 70% tax credit, which is more than I thought. I thought we were in the 50% category. Another good thing that the Department of Economics, our contact person, suggested are things like updating our bylaws, our Constitution. And so we spent our time updating that. We added a financial secretary position to our executive board. We've enhanced our cash flow process. We've opened investment accounts with the Community Foundation of the Ozarks and with Edward Jones with Jason Frauenbarger, so people can make direct donations to those institutions. Those of people that don't know us personally can feel comfortable with that. We added internet and landline to the museum. We built and created a very dynamic new website that is not only great for the Historical Society and the City of Republic, but also gives a real easy way to see what our project is. Our plans are on the website, and here's a button on how to donate. And we were able to fund that with a grant from the Community Foundation of the Ozarks. We also are doing our software. We received money from Blue Current Credit Union that allowed us to purchase software to do archival research. So we're in the process of putting all of that on our programs. So that's going to be really beneficial when we do move over to the new building. Let's see, what else have we done? We have met with the Republic Tiger Booster Club and the Republic Tiger Sports. They're going to be a big partner in our new building, building a sports history room and a interactive sports room for kids to come in. Then that's going to be really great. We knew that there's a lot of competition for our businesses to support our growing community. The schools are asking our businesses for help. The library's building a building, asking for money. All our nonprofits are asking for money. So we felt like we needed to create an awareness of who we are and how this project will impact us. Because what we're trying to do is not build a place for our grandmother's things to come in and look at. This is going to be a community building, interactive, educational rooms, people coming and going, and we've created this space so it will be financially self-sustaining with the event center and the coffee shop that will be leased, and that will allow us to maintain this beautiful building that we are putting on Main Street. So one thing that we did is we hired, like the city did, we liked all the videos that you've done, so we hired Curtis Cook to create a video for us. that has not been made public much. I have taken it to the Chamber of Commerce. I have taken it to Amazon, Walmart, Great Southern Bank, Corn Ford, Pinnaker Chevrolet, McDonald's, and everyone in those categories are very supportive of what we're doing. It's been kind of fun to get that wow factor when you leave. Mark Reynolds, the manager at Walmart, I saw him the other day. He said, "Please tell the city that we are one of your supporters." Ryan Blumenstock at McDonald's said, "Please tell everyone that I'm on board with this." So we're getting the ball rolling. I think we'll be well within our 5-year time frame that we were given. It's taking us a little bit of a building year. And as some of you may be aware, grants.gov's not quite as good for the humanities at this point, but we're finger crossing that, things will open up and have money coming our way. Because where we're starting from scratch, where the library's already putting steel on the ground, and we're partnering with them on how they're doing things. We're helping them with building their community room with some pictures and things. But they started out with $4.5 million of COVID funds, and so they kind of got a little bit of a head start on their building from us. So I guess I'm asking for I put that little tidbit in just ask for a little bit of patience for us to raise our funds. And so, do you want to see the video? Are you ready to see our video? Okay. We're really, really proud of it.
Kurt does fabulous work.
Yep.
Republic, Missouri in the 2020s is an inspiring story of vision, opportunity, and community, much like its beginning. As the railroad extended west of Springfield shortly after the Civil War, a group of local businessmen raised $1,000 to build a railroad stop at what was to become a budding center of rural commerce.
In the 1800s, our business people had visions too, and they built the town of Republic on Main Street here.
As we grow, we need to make sure that people are aware of these are our roots. This is how it started as a railroad town, and this is what has happened since.
That's the very important mission of the Republic Historic Society, to make sure that we understand where we've been so that we can chart a better course going forward.
These lessons of history help to create a sense of connection and belonging for us. And that sense of belonging is what makes a place or a town feel like home.
Since 1997, the Historical Society has housed its growing collection of photographs, artifacts, and records in its current museum on historic Main Street.
When you come into the Republic History Museum, we have plenty of nostalgia on display.
People that come in seem excited when they see something that reminds them of their past.
Just even looking in here in the museum, it does spark memories, even though something could be from the 60s or, before I was born.
When you come here, you see a lot of different things, like the clothes they used to wear, the toys they used to have. I like looking at the pictures, like those from high school, because it kind of shows how fashion and everything's changed over the years.
All of those items we can see or touch are going to bring back a memory that hopefully warms our heart and makes us think of our own life and our own childhood and our ancestors.
The things we celebrate are the things we get more of. And this history Republic that's showcased in the current museum, that's the type of thing we want more of. People that are dedicated to the community, dedicated to their school, dedicated to their family.
There is something so rich about looking into the faces of these people in these photos. Because of the lives that they lived in the past, Republic is what I get to experience.
I think you come in here and you look at all these trophies and it opens your eyes to what is possible to accomplish. It shows you that there's been excellence in this community for generations, and to be able to to look at those and put yourself in the place of the people who achieved those things, I think it's important for a community like Republic to have that.
It's important that there be a place that preserves and recognizes the history.
With time, the landscape of historic downtown Republic has changed as some buildings fall into disrepair. One historic structure seen here in 1917 most recently served as an office space for city government. When those workers were moved and the building condemned and demolished, city officials gave the land to the Historical Society to build a new home. Aided by this generous donation, we now have a special opportunity to build a new museum to preserve our past. This landmark building will attract new visitors to the town's original commercial district while offering insight into the unique fabric of life in Republic.
One of the things I'm most proud about as being a former mayor is that I was able to be involved in the donation of the land for the Historic Society. So many people came out to our meetings talking about the importance of the Historic Society, and I was proud to be able to help that process, to be able to donate the land, to hopefully allow them to grow and build, to remind generations to come of who we are.
Designed to fit into historic downtown while meeting accessibility standards, the new museum will provide a much-needed event center for meetings, seminars, and celebrations from civic groups to family gatherings, while a coffee and gift shop will feature indoor and outdoor seating for daily dialogue and informal get-togethers. Through the center doors, museum visitors will walk into a 2-story entry hall with a reception area, display areas, and educational rooms. The second floor will house an enlarged research area for access to the thousands of records contained in the museum's collection. A sports history room will showcase photos, trophies, and memorabilia, celebrating the rich history of Republic Tiger sports.
I love the idea of having a dedicated room where you can go just look or be among the accomplishments of the past.
For this museum, I just love the fact that this is a chance to really educate and empower and encourage the youth here to take on that mantle of leadership, to do something great for our community.
The Republic Historical Society has always been a great partner of the Republic School District, but man, a new facility, a larger facility with more accommodations could really help grow that partnership. If there's more space, there's more items to be on display, and more space means we can have more kids come and visit on official field trips, and I'm thinking about some really cool historical projects that kids could do.
It is important that we all understand that the collective community will live on for a far greater time than any one individual.
When you're able to look back and see the rich history here and all of the great things that people before us have done and the legacy that they have left, it makes you want to go, well, I want to do that too.
The museum addresses a topic of education because there's going to be classes and programs, and plus the things that you learn there about your community. I think that is so important for developing future leaders and growing people's civic muscle and how they get involved in their community. For kids that are growing up in Republic now even, there's still history to be made in Republic.
We know to get anything done, there has to be a perfect combination of time, leadership, money, desire. And right now we have the perfect leadership in the Historic Society gathered with the desire of the community to be able to preserve our history. Those things don't come together very often, so we need to seize this moment and truly make an effort to try to build something for the generations to come.
Today is the day. Let's build a lasting home for telling Republic's most important stories as a community whose past, present, and future we can all celebrate together.
Great video.
Thanks. We're really proud of that.
Yeah, I bet.
We're really proud of that. And there was so much that we had to cut out because we worked on that for months. And like Matt, we had him in a lot, Matt Russell, but he wanted to talk about how his kids now, this is their hometown. You know, it's not his, he didn't grow up here, his parents' picture's not on the wall, but this is his children's hometown. And David Burton from the Missouri Extension talked about tourism dollars and how this will bring dollars to our community through, you know, and so there was so much maybe we'll have part 2 sometime, but does anyone have any questions for me since
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Campbell.
I would just like to point out why this video was played, and I'm certain that you've seen it multiple times, but the emotions that you went through different parts of the video really shows your passion about this. And like the former mayor mentioned, the desire is there, and so I think great things can happen because of folks like you.
Thank you.
And very well done.
Thank you very much. It is, and this is where the Historical Society has a bigger challenge to get our story across to a lot of people. You know, rather than Cindy was such a big help with people helping people, it's easy to touch your heart with feeding children and clothing children. But we want to make people feel like this is their home, this is a connection, and this is not just for, like I said, grandmother's attic. This council here today is history. Everything that we do is a point in time that will be saved down the road. It's it gives us who we are. And so we're hoping too that the Drury project last year, you know, the city can help, you know, we're put some of those things in, like a sign, you know, historical marker sign on coming into the downtown area, or, you know, help some of the things like that, so.
And that jury project, that was just like a year to the date, was it not? So, yeah, and to touch on what Mr. Campbell said earlier, yeah, all of the excitement, the parts of the video that got me the most were seeing everyone down on Main Street. And I know it's not necessarily the Historic Society, but all of the events on Main Street and seeing all those people and then hearing you sharing Republic's story and all of the people that you have shared that with, that's to me, that's the part that gets me a little bit emotional. So I just really appreciate all of the hard work that everyone at the Historic Society is doing to preserve our history and all that collaboration that's going on Main Street. That's really, it's absolutely changed what our Main Street looks like. And so I really appreciate that as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for coming here today. Do we have any other questions from council before we move on? Thank you, Ms. Mooneyham, and thank you, Mr. Campbell, as well. Our next topic for today, we'll be moving on to council workshop proposal. Is this Laura's?
This is me.
Okay, we'll move on to Ms. Burbridge, please.
Thank you. Since we've had so much more interaction and suggestions from council, we decided to create a policy for how to make these proposals so that we can have them in an open session of meeting, because this is topics that need to be discussed by sunshine law in the public. So we created this proposal policy just so you know the procedures in order to make proposals to be had during our workshops in the future. You can submit those topics to me for discussion on any work session topic you want to have. If it's a simple discussion that doesn't require staff involvement, I just need to know by the first day of the month. If it's something that you need staff involved in researching, or if you're wanting staff to present on a certain topic, we need a 30-day notice for that. In some situations, there may be need for an extension on that if there's more extensive research needed, or in some situations like the code compliance, we have it in plans to present, so we don't want to have the discussion and then 2 months later we have a presentation that gives you more details anyways. In the situation where you have something you want to talk about and you have supporting documents you want to provide, I need to have that at least a week prior so that I can make sure it's published in the packet. We'll always have the work sessions, unless situations like this month occur, on the second Tuesday of the month from 11 to 1. If we don't have a topic from you or from staff, we will cancel that work session because we don't want to take your time from the middle of the day if we don't have a useful topic to discuss. I sent this to you a couple months ago for feedback, and I did get some from the mayor, and so we've made some additions just to protect your time in one part, because we do have a 2-hour time limit. If we have more submittals than can fit in that time, it'll go in order of receipt from that request. Anything beyond that will go to the next workshop. Just so that you get out of here on time. We value your time and we want you to be able to get back to work. And then, yes, we are limited to 10 minutes per discussion. That allows still discussion amongst council after you've done your presentation. So that'll still be open. The purpose of this is, like, if you're wanting direction to council for something you want us to work on, we want to know that there's a consensus with council before we start working on something. So this gives us an opportunity to gauge your interest before we start working on something that'll take staff time. So just a reminder, if you have any feedback, please let me know, but this is the final version from what I have from everybody. If you have workshop topics, you get them to me. If you have questions on agenda items, that can go to the staff member that is presenting that item. Any other questions or directives are supposed to go to the city administrator. That's per our charter. So we just wanted to clarify the direction for different topics. And then I think David might have some follow-up on that.
Thank you, Laura. Mr. Cameron?
So I love this because this is what I said before, talking about code compliance. And anything in general, it's like, I love how this works. It's out here. So we all have one collective piece that we're working on. But to Laura's part, I'm looking at bullet point 5. I want to add some color to this. I'm probably going to want some change a little bit to this. We do training all the time. I want to make it abundantly clear. I don't want to be difficult with the charter, but the charter is clear. Staff cannot get directives from the council, requests for information, both in their personal capacity or their private capacity or professional capacity. It has to be done in this room. So sending an email to staff saying, I want this, I need this, or your opinion, they will not give it. I've given them direction. It's something by the charter because it has to be done in this room. So now if you got a general question, you can ask them for something, but we can't add something to the agenda. So I want to make it clear that if you're asking for information, until this council gives direction that this is a priority they want to work on, if it's something that's going to take us 20 days to pull the information together, I still think that has to be done in this capacity because pulling together information could take us complete. So I want to clean up 5 just a fraction because when it says requires information or support from staff, we want to be able to provide it, but if it takes us 2 weeks to pull it together, what other project are we going to set aside to do that? And so I want to make sure it's clear because it puts the staff at a really weird, awkward position. Like, are we working for you or are we working for the administrator? And the charter is clear of what that is supposed to be, which is why we're having these work sessions. So anyway, if there's any questions of what that is, I wanted this policy just because it makes it easier for staff to know what they can and cannot work on. So, and we've talked about it in work sessions before, the municipal league training we've done before and all the trainings they do, this is kind of how this is supposed to be done. So if there's any questions regarding the policy, but I'd like to clean up 5 just a fraction, just to make sure that council has adopted that they actually want to work on that project themselves. Does that make sense? For council?
I can definitely see your point too, and just in the fact that in keeping our priorities, that was a concern of mine as well. So I appreciate you addressing that. Just in the fact that we do have priorities throughout the year. This isn't meant to just be our anything we want. Something that's an issue, something that we need to bring back in front of this body, just because of all of the the clarity and sunshine law, and making sure that we're all abiding by sunshine law. I mean, there's just a number of different things here that this gives us an open to have that in a public meeting, but at the same time, like David was saying, please make sure that we maintain our priorities and that we're not taking absorbent amount of time from staff and anything else that we're working on or something that comes up that we need to address.
Yeah. So, Mr. Mayor, that you bring up a very good point. I think a lot of the issue you got to be careful of. No one intends to do it. You cannot email each other. So it's kind of like everything has to be done in this room with the camera going to the best of its ability. And so it's not intentional, but it's places where people get trapped all the time. I'm trying to think of what the situation was in another community recently where it was they solicited all the emails from all the council to other council members. And so it's not meant to be subversive. It's just be very cautious of what it is that we've added these lunch work sessions so that we can actually have more availability for you all to talk with in an open setting. So having a policy for what that looks like, it's a work in progress. So this is actually progress. This is not a problem. We're moving forward to a much better, more robust position to get stuff done. I love the conversations today. I loved hearing from the Historical Society. That's the most information we've seen from there. And it's nice for us because we can get direction for what the council wants to work on that we don't hear. We get our priorities set, Mayor, in certain times of what we're working on, and sometimes it may be a completely different topic that we're not aware of. And code enforcement was a big issue. So I'm grateful this policy got put together. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cameron. Do we have any questions from City Council? Mr. Gerke?
I think it's a great idea. I've got a lot of, I think these have been very beneficial. I think they address it in section 3. You know, historically, we haven't had a month-to-month. Going forward, we all get paid to be here, and then the time and effort. So I just really think it's important. If we don't have a full session, push it to the next one, because there's a lot of time and effort and additional costs that we have going forward on these special meetings. So just make sure we consider that, I think.
Thank you, Mr. Gerke. Do we have any additional questions, comments, discussion from City Council?
The only point I'll make to that, because we want to be respectful, is that we're not calling, I think you'll notice we're not calling a bunch of extra special meetings anymore. Those are very, and to your point, like, hey, understanding people have other jobs outside of this, making sure that we're respectful of everyone's schedules and when we could be there. We don't want to just call special meetings if we don't have to. We want to foresee it and get it discussed here, so it is available to the public. So there's no question of whether we've been transparent or not. So thank you. I appreciate, that is going into consideration of these meetings.
I think it'll help too, having a schedule. Like I said, we're all busy and, you know, trying to schedule. No, we may not have it, but knowing that we're not going to have as many maybe special, you know, one-offs will help. So awesome.
Thank you, Mr. Gerke. Thank you, Mr. Cameron. Any additional questions from staff? I did have one point I wanted to raise. Down at the last part, it's council vote for action. It doesn't really clarify what moving forward looks like, or is this just kind of a general consensus between council on a majority of the people attendant since the workshop moving forward, or how would we necessarily? And I just caught that when I was reading it before today, so I apologize for not getting to you beforehand.
Are you referring to what would we do from action, say if the council wants to take action today?
So well, just the language of it, council vote for action, and then having just that clarification of what that number of votes to move forward. And even if it cleaned that up, just to not say council vote for action, but council discussion for action. Consensus
would
for,
work.
And then that would clarify to if we just have a majority consensus between all of us here, and we're in agreement. In my opinion, the higher the number. But I just wanted to make sure that the next council or whoever has that same idea.
I think there has to be some guidance as to what that is. So I'd want to vote. I'd want some vote to know whether or not to move forward, because there's going to be issues that some people are like, I don't want to do code enforcement at all, and that leaves us. I don't want to be the referee over whether I get, or even yourself, because you would not be casting the vote, or you would be casting it. I mean, technically, we'd follow just the rules. So we need to create rules for how we to move forward, if that's necessary. Megan, back to the whole point of what the process would be, but consensus could be viewed in a number of different ways. I prefer just either a vote and no vote.
Yeah, and Mr. Mayor, what I think I would suggest here, so much to Laura's point, I think that's a starting point. To clarify, and we should probably include it, if the council's going to be asked to vote on any matter, in other words, have an action item on the agenda, that will be included on the agenda for this meeting under all of the other sunshine law requirements and advance notice, meeting all of those same timelines. I cannot imagine we're going to be doing that very often, so we'll work on some language in the policy that makes it very clear what the distinction is. And then from David's perspective, what he is saying about a consensus, that is more appropriate for this setting where we're getting a consensus. I liked what he said earlier about staff gets to observe your reactions and in person and hear your remarks. That generally, for the purpose of what these workshops are designed to do, will suffice. If it's something that we all gain a consensus from your remarks in a workshop that we need a vote on, then at that point, especially if it hasn't been noticed ahead of time on the agenda, we will then bring a resolution at the next regular session that is consistent with what the consensus was and have an appropriate vote. So if that makes sense, that's what I would suggest, and we can do that.
And Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Cameron?
One last point, Megan, that I think would be very important is I also got, just a reminder to council, is every council meeting, you have open mic at the end. So if there's an issue that you've all got an interesting phone call or something that's come up that's contentious, right? You're like, hey, we've got that too. That would be another great time to mention, because number one, it exposes publicly, hey, I'd like to do that. I'd like for us to have consideration at the next council workshop, even to add this to the agenda, and to try to get consensus at that point, like, yes, we would all be in agreement to that. I think you have open opportunity rather than going to Laura to ask for it. I think I just want to make sure there's a provision that, when the mayor says, is there any other announcements from the mayor, or from the council, that would be another great time to say, I'd like for us to direct staff to move forward, at least in a work session. That's also some great times that I've experienced in my career where council members work very collectively with what they've heard in the meeting, gives you room in the meeting to move, from someone getting up and doing citizen participation, that it doesn't just limit it to being off here. It's another great chance to be in an open arena, available to the press and to the community. So just to add that piece to it.
Thank you, Mr. Cameron. A great point to add as well. Do we have any additional questions, discussion from city council? Since we just addressed that last line.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, Mr. Gerke, sorry.
That's fine.
There's a giant drink in the way.
Now you just moved it, he moved his chair back.
Right.
Need a new water tower. I know we addressed it before, but this will be, on a regular schedule, it'll be on the agenda for, on city council announcements going forward. It'll be recorded, sent out there. I guess just trying to encourage, we do a lot of these and we don't have a lot of participation. So I'm just kind of curious of what the process will be about, letting people know about the meetings, I guess.
Yep, so and good question, I'm glad you raised that, so, because it gives us an opportunity. So these meetings are noticed and published the exact same way. So they're recorded and saved, they're also streamed live. So, hi, anybody watching online, we're streaming these live. So it's the same exact procedure, same process, same protocol. It's just outside the ambit of what we call a regular session. That's really the only
So it should
distinction.
be regularly scheduled, and then we can talk about it in council and other ways of what the topics will be.
Correct.
be on the agenda.
Absolutely.
Cool. Thank you.
Great question, Mr. Gerke, and you just led me into another one. So since it's considered like going back to next year, the reset of the council approving the schedule of the city council, since the workshops are monthly now, is that something that we need to add into that schedule of scheduled meetings through the year?
We could do that and just note that they're tentative, because we don't want to have it just to have it.
Have it with
If there's
some-
not a topic worth taking the time.
Because it could be canceled, but yeah.
Correct.
So, okay.
And that was what I was going to add. We can, you said, do we need to? We can, but we would not need to. If we're going to start to employ more action items requiring a vote during these sessions, then my recommendation would be to treat them the same. But that's not really the intent or the vision for these.
So that
But Mr. Mayor,
check mark.
clarity for it, but I think a lot of it is for people's travel schedules, or when they're gonna be out of town, or when they wanna do holidays, or when they land, and then I think by putting them into that calendar for the year, the value of it is for staff and even for council, is that you can actually say, hey, listen, I have that in my calendar, not say, hey, we wanna call a special lunch work session. I think we heard that last year, some of that conversation, so I think it's wise just to put it into the overall calendar. I also think that what we'll do to that point is we will write a policy that if we don't have, I think that's in there, if we don't have anything 7 days prior, we won't just wait 20, oh, by the way, we're gonna cancel tomorrow. I think there'll be plenty of time to say, hey, they've canceled it. So I think for travel plans, mostly.
Fair deal. Thank you, Mr. Cameron. So as the last topic of our discussion is there anyone on council that is against this proposal, that thinks this is a bad idea? I didn't see anyone with any funny faces, but, so I would say that it sounds like council is in agreement that this is a good policy, and it was a great discussion that we had today. Was that our last? Moving on to reports from staff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I have only one report, and then we're gonna swear at Darren. Last week was a productive week at the Capitol, for us. So, for now, the legislature, I'm gonna try to do this the best I can. The legislature, it came out of the House, I believe, was $6 million recommended for MM Highway. Those that were here for the stakeholder meeting, this was a big thing. I think you'll recall, we mentioned the need was 10. It came out of the Senate with $10 million in the budget. It came out of the House with zero money for the wastewater plant. Last week, $25 million came from the Senate for the wastewater plant. So there is obviously what they call conference now in the budget. So while I'd like to smile about all those numbers, which means if you've read the press at all, there is differences always in the budget. Governor's staff, some of the governor's things have been that neither the House nor the Senate put in, the governor wanted. So there's always going to be a conference and working through those things. So the good news is there's presently $35 million in the budget for Republic projects, and $25 million of that is for the wastewater plant. Now, once it goes through conference, it may not be there at the end of it, and I'll say this, nothing happens until the governor signs anything. But that's just some updates that have taken place, and if you watch how that works, that's very important for the city, the MM corridor. But again, we've had some pretty good work at the Capitol this year, but again, if you've noticed, the budget is going to be contentious because it came out of the House one way, Senate changed it, and a lot of moving parts. So just wanted to report that as to what's taken place. Now we can swear at Darren. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Cameron. So now the big moment. Did we want to have Mr. Campbell come up front?
Put your jacket on.
Oh, yeah,
Since
make
he
it
was
up
late.
front.
Me, yeah.
I think, yeah, he needs to wear his jacket.
Well, where did everyone else do it?
They came up here.
We're all up
Did you see the video?
No. It's the only reason I wore the jacket.
Well, you look good in your jacket, so yeah.
Thank you.
You're fine.
You're too good of a friend.
Yeah. They did. See, Chief's looking out for you.
This is better. This is better.
Wherever you want.
Okay. Does the
I want to
sun?
be in the picture.
Do I need to
You good read off of there, you might memorize it.
All right. Right hand.
Yeah.
I state your name.
I, Darren Campbell,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I possess all the qualifications
that I possess all the qualifications
prescribed for my office by law,
prescribed for my office by law,
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
of the United
of the
States
United States
and of the state of Missouri,
and of the state of Missouri,
the provisions of all laws
the provisions of all laws
of this state
of this state
affecting cities of this class,
affecting cities of this class,
and the ordinances
and the ordinances
of the City of Republic,
of the City of Republic,
and that I will faithfully demean myself in office,
and that I will faithfully demean myself in office,
so help me God.
so help me God.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, Darren.
Now you can take your jacket off.
Yeah, jacket off.
Now you can sign.
Congratulations, Mr. Campbell, and thank you very much for being a part of this council, and I look forward to our next year here as council. Do we have any additional reports from staff before, reports from council, anything you want to mention? Mr. Gerke?
Mr. Cameron, on the 25 million you mentioned, is that an addition or is that the previous commitment? Was that, I was just kind of.
That would be in addition, and I believe it's in addition without a match.
And then, not to get in the weeds of that, so we'd be able to utilize that, and so the other funding we had for it, we'd be able to adjust that appropriately.
Well, what it means is that there's a number of provisions that are included in that you would be able to, so we borrowed 50 million more. Bob, is that correct? We borrowed 50 from SRF. Yeah, so the first 45 is done. We would only draw on the loan if we needed to. So that would only leave us what we've borrowed, what we'd actually be borrowing against from SRF. So we've already borrowed that money. It's sitting there for us to draw on as the construction goes on. So obviously that would be money that would go into our account that we would not draw on that debt service of that loan. You still also got to consider in that capacity is the depreciation of the asset that we have to cover as part of the loan as well. So there is $900,000 a year that has to be covered. So all that would be considered. You're talking about the rate structure, what that would do for rates.
Well, just, which bucket, if we had more funds, which bucket would reduce, and I'm sure we could discuss that, if and we actually get it, but.
Yeah, why we've never really gone down that path, really quite frankly, is to wait till it's there, to see what it would look like and because first thing I want to do, I went to Bob was like, so how does this work now that we've borrowed the 50 million? Because last year was like that moment where it's like, hey, we're at the time we're either going to get the money or borrow more money. So we borrowed the money, and now we're looking at it. If you recall last year, it came out of the House. There was 25. It didn't go through the Senate. So this one came from the Senate. We'll see.
I think again, we can discuss that when.
Yeah, when there's ink that says it's there, from the governor's staff. But yeah, a lot of work.
Thank you, Mr. Gerke. Thank you, Mr. Cameron. Any additional reports from council? So that's all that I had to say for this evening. There was nothing else that we needed to cover today, was there? So thank you for the staff. I do have 2 minutes. Thank you to staff. This was a great presentation today, so I really appreciate that. I appreciate Judge McBride being a part of this conversation as well, and everyone else that's here today. This is, especially with that code enforcement, I know that's something that's a touchy subject. If I know being a council member, you get phone calls all the time, and when you're approaching these types of situations, they can be some of the most intimidating, especially when you're talking to the people that are involved. So I appreciate the clarity in the process and letting us all know about some of this information. That some of it I'm learning today too, so I appreciate that. That's the last that I had to say, other than thank you for being here today. I didn't quite make it to 1 o'clock, but that's all I had. Meeting adjourned. Had to save 1 minute.
That's all I got
It's all
to
about
say about
saving.
it. That's all I got to say about